Surprise. I wasn't expecting to come on here today, and I decided to do this because of the book that I'm currently writing. And then I got a text message from a client asking me for my thoughts on homeopathy. And I find it interesting that that came after a recent discovery, like I said, as I'm writing this book on that is really laying out. And so what I want to get into in this video or this live is actually why how everything is changing, and why I'm such a big proponent of safety. We're going to talk a little bit about oils. This is basically a mini aromatherapy class, but I am going to throw a little bit in here when it comes to herbs, plants, and so forth. And so that said, I got a question about my thoughts on homeopathy, and it was fascinating to have come in just after I uncovered some information about angelica root. Now, the thing is, as I've been saying for years, it's important to know what's in your bottle. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more here because it's more than just know who your provider is, okay? The reason I'm suggesting this, hello and welcome. The reason I'm suggesting you want to know what's in your bottle is because plants are being grown all around the world. And we can cultivate lavender, for instance, or clary sage or any type of oil here in the United States, and then they're also grown in other parts of the world. I'm not going to stand here and say, well, there's certain companies that have higher quality. That's not what this is about. It's not about higher quality. It's different quality. So knowing what's in your bottle and actually understanding that the chemical profile matters is significant, because as I was working on this book, I started off, as I mentioned, with angelica root. I'm just going alphabetically. And I'm going to say more about other familiar oils. But in the meantime, with this angelica root, there's different parts of the world. In this particular one, it's grown in the Himalayan mountains. It's part of the Ayurvedic medicine. It's been noted for hundreds of, if not thousands of years. And they've also seen it's been documented as far as how people were using them, or why it was using this particular plant. And more than likely, although in India and Pakistan area, that is really where they started diving into extracting essential oils. But I don't know how much oil they were actually using at the time, but I can say that they were definitely using the herbs. And the fact is that with the herbs, it does have a trace amount of oils in it. And in this particular one, in this angelica root, it's called Angelica glauca, is the botanical name. But if your oil doesn't tell you that, and you don't know if it's actually been grown, where it's grown, then you honestly don't have a full scope picture of what is actually in that oil. And so the significance to this point is the fact that there is a constituent in that oil that has been discovered to affect the way the liver metabolizes chemicals. This particular chemical is found in other plants, not necessarily always in oils. And this is important because we currently live in a culture or a time where we look at natural as safe. I do realize that many people will say that natural is not always safe, and yet that's where we go to, and we're using natural. Now, pardon me. The other side to this, or the additional point to that, is the fact that besides going to natural, and natural is always good, it's beneficial, but you got to know how you're employing it, how you're actually using it. Because we also have a mindset about fixing and controlling, trying to control the symptoms, trying to fix the problem. And that is the practice that we're implementing, whether it be allopathic medicine or natural medicine. And as long as we consistently come to our health issues with that mindset, we are not promoting good health. We don't know what we're doing. We could potentially be setting ourselves up for, we could be damaging ourselves. And so I'm going to get into right now a couple of just normal everyday oils that we hear a lot about and explain why. Like I said in the beginning, this is a mini aromatherapy class. Okay, so in the case of, I want to say hello to Kim. In the case of angelica root, there's different types, but I'm going to jump in. Angelica root's not as commonly used as lavender. And so there are components in different lavenders. There are actually 9 different types of lavender. Knowing what you have is incredibly important. Secondly, if you and sometimes companies are substituting lower, no, it's not quality, it's priced, lower priced oils, because again, true lavender has a tendency to be a little bit more pricey when it comes to products. So they're going to substitute another type, and the botanical names for this lavenders are basically the same. Yet if you have a different variety of lavender that happens to have ketones in it, and we're consistently using that particular lavender, I mean, I have my own opinions about lavender because first of all, we don't know what we're getting. Secondly, they are estrogenic for the most part, which means it's acting like estrogen in the system. And with a world, and the body, I'm going to say this much, is emotionally compromised. We are highly reactive. And unless we really have that stress response reined in, the use of lavender consistently would be promoting prolonging the stress response, just in the true lavender sense. However, if it happens to have a ketone in it, and I'm going to say, if I remember correctly, that true lavender actually has thujone in it. I believe that's one of the ones. That's a ketone, and ketones are neurotoxic. Excessive use, or all the, chronically using it or consistently using lavender, could be setting you up for neurological problems as well. So aside from the fact that it's estrogenic and affecting the stress response, now it's also affecting the central nervous system. And if you're prone to seizures, or if you happen to have an autoimmune disorder, and you don't want to use lavender for that very reason. So understanding what you have, it's not to say that you can never use lavender, because if you like it, then use it from time to time. Just don't use it every single day. And that's what I'm actually discovering as I am working on this book. It's really astonishing to me to begin to see these constituents. And as I've mentioned in a post, they're not studying these so that we have more knowledge about how the oils benefit us. They're actually studying them because they're trying to replicate them for medication or medical purposes, pharmacological purposes. So knowing how to affect liver activity is important, because liver activity is how they regulate the breakdown of medications. That's the reason why they're doing it. So this is the reason why I wanted to come on here, and why I've become even increasingly louder, so to speak, about why we really want to know where our oils are coming from, because as I mentioned, different parts of the world produce different chemical profiles. There are a variety of many oils. There's I forget the exact count of rosemaries, but there's multiple rosemaries, there's multiple eucalyptus, there's multiple thymes. So this is important to know. And somebody asked me, like I mentioned in the beginning, that they wanted to know my opinion about homeopathy. And I think homeopathy is great as long as we are using it's a low dose. It's not unlike using oils, because when you use oils, they're not like medications in the sense that they're not as concentrated. So technically, essential oils, the use of essential oils for health reasons is like a homeopathic remedy. That's why it's important to know. So if you're using a homeopathic remedy, like I had to do something with my son when he was first born. When I was pregnant with him, I had the worst reaction to juniper, to the degree where I wanted somebody to drill holes in my face. So I went to a naturopath who put me on a homeopathic remedy of juniper to help me get through it. And yet when Reese was born, he had projectile vomiting and congestion. So he was 3 months old, and we had to take him to a pediatrician who really did understand and work with homeopathy. Today, he doesn't have a juniper allergy. However, those are the safe ones. Those are the ones that are good, but there's other ones that have, I know it's a minute amount of certain plants, like belladonna is one that the person actually sent to me. And I forget, there's a couple of other ones, but they really do have, on a grand scale, they're toxic. They're deadly nightshades. I realize in the small amount, it's not deadly. But if the body is going to store it, or if the body cannot metabolize these chemicals, then it makes, and a chemical is a chemical. It doesn't make any difference if it's natural or man-made. That's what makes up these plants. And that's what's coming from these plants. So if we are consistently using these remedies to fix a problem or to control a symptom, we are overloading our system on chemicals that could potentially be altering the way the epigenome is now able to detox itself, because we're wired to detox. So variety matters, and knowing what, meaning changing it up. Don't always stick with the same thing. So I'm a big proponent of how can we work with these all together, and at the same time understand that nature is potent. It's potent. And we want to break up our mindset as far as we have to stick with one thing, that's that rigidity. And so I throw caution into this, because that constant using of the same thing, because we like the way it smells, because the way it makes us feel, there are other varieties out there that you can switch out with and give your body a break, kind of give it a chance to self-regulate so that you can get the best results. So that's what I wanted to come on here and talk about, because this stuff is really important when we are, and I get my hand smacked a lot by people because I do like natural remedies, and I'm almost like, I'm not really speaking out against them. I'm simply saying, let's put some thought to this. And that's why I'm writing this book. And I'm going to keep speaking out as things come up. I'm going to keep talking about it, because the more I find as I break these oils down, the more I am just amazed at what nature is producing. And, even before I close, I want to say I was looking into liver issues. I did post about that earlier. I think it's it was the 12th cause of death in the United States back in 2020, whether it be liver failure, liver disease, and so forth. And that's significant when we know that these chemicals can affect the way the liver processes other chemicals. And so the point to that is making sure to take care of your liver, using oils that are good for the liver, eating foods that are good for the liver, but the variety is what really matters. And recognizing the fact that the body is actually capable of self-regulation. And when we can begin to work with it along those lines, it starts to help, it really starts to detox itself naturally. So there was somewhere else I was going to go with that, and I completely spaced it out just now because I hear the dogs dancing at the door. And so I'm going to go deal with the tippy toes and just say thank you. If you have any questions about what I said, if I remember, if anything else comes up, I'll just put it in the comments. But I appreciate you being here, and I will see you very soon. Have a good evening and a good weekend.